In Search of Poetic Understanding, Chopin, Ballade No. 4 in F minor, Opus 52. Originated from late 18th century German literature, the term ballade was used to describe folk-like narrative poetry, which have often been set to music by composers. However, Chopin was the first composer to write an entirely instrumental ballade, a ballade without words, portraying a poetic story where emotions, actions, and words speak by sounds alone. The fourth ballade was composed in 1842 and dedicated to the Baroness Rothschild. It is the last of the composer's pieces of the genre and demonstrates the developments in what is commonly regarded as the last compositional period of Chopin's life. Jim Sampson commented on this period of the composer's life in Chopin, The Four Ballades. It seems that composition became more difficult for Chopin in the 1840s. His flow of ideas was undiminished, but he became more and more self-critical about committing himself to a final version of a piece and entrusting it to paper, as the manuscript sources of his later music reveal clearly. He spends days of nervous tensions and almost terrifying desperation, wrote the novelist George Sand, Chopin's partner for some 10 years. He alters and retouches the same passages endlessly and paces up and down like a madman. Undoubtedly, Chopin engaged in a fundamental rethinking of his craft at this time. Evidence of this rethinking is easily found in the music of 1842, including the fourth ballade. Chopin's four ballades were supposedly inspired by the literary ballades of his fellow countryman, Adam Mickiewicz. It is possible that Chopin was enchanted by the opportunity to disclose his patriotic emotions musically in this popular form to which any listener could relate, by choosing a seemingly impossible form of expression. To evoke without language a nationalism defined by language, and speak without words a story that depicts actions by the speech of words. And so, the possible story of the fourth ballade, as brought by Cortot, is the story of the three Boudries. Three brothers are sent away by their father to far distant lands in search of priceless treasures. Autumn passes, then winter. The father thinks that his sons have perished at war. Amidst whirling snowstorms, each one, however, manages to return, but one and all bring back but a single trophy from their odyssey, a bride. But dedicated as he was to revealing the impressions which gave birth to the piece, Cortot claimed that in this case at least, the influence of Mickiewicz's ballade on Chopin's writing may have not extended beyond the spirit it stirred. The legend through which Mickiewicz is supposed to have inspired Chopin in this instance offers to the imagination a subject along whose winding path it would be puerile to attempt to coerce the musical text. We feel that its typically northern atmosphere of nostalgia should alone be preserved, and nothing further should be sought in the reverie of Chopin's fantasy than the idealized prolongation of a story steeped in the naively adventurous poetry of the narrators of his country. It has become customary to link the structure of Chopin's ballades to sonata form, as they include some of the main sonata form features, mainly the thematic and tonal dualism of the exposition and the recapitulation of sorts. Considering the different melodic, textural, and characteristic alterations of the themes throughout the piece, variation form was suggested at times as well. However, both definitions soon reveal themselves as simplistic and lacking, ignoring the uniqueness and inventiveness of these compositions and their exceptional qualities. In my opinion, the familiar formal schemes of Chopin's time cannot sufficiently describe the ballades form on their own, and though they may derive some characteristics from popular schematic forms of the era, it may be more useful to interpret the ballad's structure as an arrow form, which, appropriately for a ballad, conveys the constant progression of the musical story. According to James Parakilas in his book Ballads Without Words, Chopin and the Tradition of the Instrumental Ballade, Sensing the connection between structure and theme in the literary ballads, Chopin knew he could, by creating a musical form equivalent to the formal structure of the ballad process, plot the typical theme of a ballad by musical means. It is a structure of a story told in one sweep, a structure in which the initial event contains the seeds of the conclusion, and the conclusion answers directly to the initial event. A structure in which a force that is defied or denied or suppressed at the beginning provides tension throughout and asserts itself at the end with more power than anything that had gone before. A structure that may be resolved by a return or restoration, but without things ending the way they began. Taken as a model for an instrumental ballad, this structure would influence the formation, reworking, and reappearance of musical material, the relationships of the principal sections, and the overall rhythm and resolution of the work. The structure of the ballad process, in other words, could have a decisive influence on the basic form and character of the instrumental ballad. My analysis focused on basic musical elements such as structure, thematic material, harmony, and execution instructions. Following the analysis of each subsection of the piece, I attached Cortot and Salzman's interpretation and execution advice to the musical material of the section I reviewed. In analyzing the ballad, I did not rely on external sources, but rather attempted to look at the music myself, as Cortot requested, and see how the expressive intentions are manifested in the notation. I was surprised to reveal how much of my inexplicable intuitive perception I was able to find in the notes themselves, and to obtain a very clear realization of the simple way in which musical elements speak to us, without words. In order to keep track of the different sources, I used the following color coding throughout. Yellow, emphasizing the original Chopin materials from his first edition. Blue, Alfred Cortot's comments from his English translated study edition. Red, Pnina Salzman's handwritten comments from scores of pupils. And black, motivic analysis comments and observations of my own. Following a 7-bar introduction in C major, the ballad's main harmony and character are still unclear to the listener. The introduction ends with a fermata, after which theme 1's exposition supposedly starts with a sole C note. Salzman's comment to want on this note, following the ethereal introduction, is indicative of its meaningfulness, as it is the first outspoken note of the storyteller, and it also serves a unique function as the vague link between the distant introduction and the very personal theme, offering a special harmonic and characteristic juxtaposition. Cortot also refers to the same moment by contradicting, to some extent, Chopin's a tempo indication, as it is mentioned in the notes straight after the fermata. According to Cortot, it seems to us more in keeping with the character of improvisation of these first bars, only to give way to the a tempo on the upbeat of the following bar, the first F in the bass, and to play the tight quavers in the passage for the right hand alone, as though prolonging the organ point, thus creating a kind of hyphen linking the introduction to the theme. Cortot's instruction is in accordance with the melodic and harmonic uncertainty. The unaccompanied C, supposedly after the fermata, still gives no indication of the tonality to which the music will lead. In fact, it is only when the bass F appears in the middle of bar 8 that it is revealed and the theme begins. Turning to the first theme, Cortot divides the theme into 3 groups, asserting the expressive punctuation of the theme rests practically throughout on the following basis. Interrogative group. The themes rising 4th and following rising 3rd, as well as its inner movement of mirror-like reflection, are perhaps the components that led Cortot to refer to it as interrogative, deducing an asking or wondering essence, perhaps one of an inner search. The harmony also contributes to this character, with a tension between the first and the seventh, both in the right hand, F to E, and in the left, F minor to E diminished 7. And the accompaniment adds to it, as both harmonies are built on top of an insisting F, alternating between low and high octaves in the bass, while the second and third quavers in each group of 3 descend in contrast to the right hand's ascending intervals. All of which add to the unstable and mysterious atmosphere. Cortot and Salzman accentuated this contrast by allocating different articulation and touch to the melody and the accompaniment. Regarding the melody's tone and touch, Cortot comments, "In the whole of this melodic exposition of the theme, the tone must be modeled by means of the pressure and not the attack of the fingers." Salzman also comments on this, "To cling." The intention and the intensity of the fingers playing at the keyboard were a significant part of Salzman's sound production. The fingers should love the keys of the piano and cling to them, Salzman used to tell us. Essentially, in order to produce an expressive deep tone, one needs to aim and intend it, and let the fingers express this yearning, sinking deep into the keys or breathing out, based on the natural wave and release of the music. Regarding the accompaniment, seemingly Chopin did not specify its articulation, except for its detached basses. Cortot suggested portando, which complements the wandering atmosphere of mystery and uneasiness, and avoids the sweet lyricism of legato. Cortot even proposes to play all high notes with the thumb, allowing no opportunity to bind them. Moving on to the next group, the group of suspense repeats the same material as the interrogative, but ends with a breath, circled by Salzman, as it is the only variation from the first group, and also separates both groups from the third. Referring to this group, Cortot added, "The development of the melodic character of the phrase may lead to more insistent accent being given to the second group, suspense, than to the first, interrogation. But the general sense of the motif remains unchanged." In other words, what may start as suspense becomes more and more insistent, demanding, and agitated as the music develops. The third group, group of conclusion, may seem as the most straightforward of the 3, marked here as simple by Salzman. 4 semiquaver ascend to a repeating note, which then descends to a conclusion, bringing the music to rest. The theme results in a cadence that sets it in the keys parallel major, A flat, but this is only temporary, as an alternating shift between minor and major and vice versa occurs with every repetition of the theme in each newly founded tonality, creating small ripples of tension and release that join the theme's searching or wandering character. This so-called group of conclusion and elements from it will change many forms along the piece, and every small variation will affect the intended character. But even in the similar form that it takes in the exposition of theme 1, the interpreter should look for the intentions of how it is spoken. In the first section of the exposition alone, Salzman refers to this same material in several different terms. Simple in bar 11, with longing, bars 17 to 18, sad, the end of bar 20, and surrendering in bars 21 to 22. The first video in the series, Interpretation Coming to Life, combines my recording of Chopin's 4th Ballade with a summary of some of the main elements of my analysis, as well as Cortot and Salzman's comments. You are welcome to open it through the attached links below.